how do I preemptively prepare my child's immune system so that it can fight off any infectious disease that he might come across, or she? So it takes that mirror image and it puts up that mirror and it shows it to your immune system. You can take it for any infectious disease. We can do it for viruses. We can do it for bacteria.
If you have concerns about vaccines, there might be a parallel track.
Parallel track.
Dr. Ron Dummar, the Be Well Now podcast. I'm Nick. I'm a curious patient. I'm very curious about homeoprophylaxis. It's a big word.
HP.
And HP. And you have big excitement around this. The V word, I don't know what we can say or can't say. You know, we're out here on the platforms. We don't want to get censored or anything. But listen, a lot of people come to your office, community health and wellness, and they have concerns about vaccines. You're a functional health doctor, Chinese medicine practitioner, acupuncture, herbalist. What else do you do? And why do you feel so passionate about this topic?
Well, I'm really passionate about this topic because one of the first things I want to do is help my patients to be as healthy and optimal as possible. That's my objective at Community Health and Wellness. We specialize in optimizing people's health. And so for optimal health, one of the things you need to do is preemptively think, what are things that could possibly come in my way? And one of those is infectious diseases. And so patients or parents specifically are asking and wanting to know, how do I preemptively prepare my child's immune system so that it can fight off any infectious disease that he might come across, or she?
Let's just talk homeoprophylaxis. We'll call it HP. Why do we call it HP?
We call it HP because it gives you your health power. You know, but one of my kids, I was talking to one of my kids and they're like, I love that you call this HP. They were reading through some of my article and he's like, this is so cool to call it HP. And I was like, what? Why? What do you mean? He said, because every video game I've ever played requires HP. It requires those health points or healing points in order to continue going in the game. So I think to sustain life, to sustain your health, to keep you going, HP, you know, we could say leveling up with HP is a great way to go.
What's the difference between a vaccine and HP? Why would I choose one over the other? Why would I choose one as a parallel track? Maybe I'm a little hesitant. I just want what's best for my kid. I don't want to get in the politics of it all. I just want to make sure that I'm making the best choice for my kid. I've heard about this. You know, what ought I know?
Well, first of all, there are some people who actually can't take a vaccine because they're immunosuppressed or their immune system is not sufficient enough to actually receive a vaccine. And so those people in those conditions can actually take other foods, other herbs, other plants, homeopathy. They could do a variety of things that can actually benefit their body still. They do need to be very careful, but HP is one of the things that they can do that can be a benefit to them.
How does it work?
So that's a great question. So HP, one of the ways it works is it's actually diluted. It takes the original source disease and it's diluted and it's shaken. Succussed is what they call it, but it's shaken and diluted. And then over time of dilutions, you get to a point where there's not really a whole lot of resemblance. There's not a whole lot of that actual disease in that solution anymore. However, there's still a signature within the water, and water is super fascinating. There's a lot of people doing a lot of research about water now, and they have done a lot of research to determine that there is a resonance within water where the crystalline structures can actually align up based on the frequencies that are moved through water. So that's actually a pretty cool idea, maybe a little deep. We can dig into that deeper some other time. But based on this idea, we get a signature. So the signature, basically, the signature essentially is like a mirror image, you could say, of the disease. So it takes that mirror image and it puts up that mirror and it shows it to your immune system. It's like you in the morning when you stand up in front of the mirror and you're like, how's my hair? How's everything look? Everything in good order? And that is the same thing as the signature. The HP basically shows your immune system. The mirror gives you the image and your body goes, ooh, studies it. Immune system studies that pathogenic disease, that signature, and now it has an understanding of what that disease looks like, and it can confront a immune response to it in the future if it needs to.
What do you take it as? Is it an injection? Is it pills? Is it water? What is it?
Yeah, it comes in they're like little tablets is what people would be used to being called, like little tablets. They're beads, and you essentially put them in your mouth. You take them orally, which is the traditional route. You know, the oral or the nasal mucosa is a very traditional route of infections. It's a very common route of infections, which is why we have a lot of immune cells in that area. So we have all sorts of immune cells in our oral cavity, in our nasal mucosa to be able to fight off.
What does nasal mucosa mean?
So it's the moisture that's in our nose and mouth, essentially, right? And the lining, that very thin lining over our throat, our nose, our mouth, and it has a lot of immune cells in it that can identify quickly a pathogen and begin to clear it, okay?
So you take it orally. And then how does that, and you can take it for measles, COVID?
You can take it for any infectious disease. Yeah, we can do it for viruses. We can do it for bacteria. So traditionally, homeopaths, traditionally, the way that they've done their treatments is they've looked at the symptoms of a patient, and then they would take certain therapeutics, certain herbals. They would dilute them very, very to very, very small portions, and then they would introduce that to a person's body in a way with the hope that the body would again receive that signature, have an understanding of what that looks like, and be able to fend off that pathogen or that disease that they were fighting at that time. So homeopaths used to respond, they still do, but to symptoms. But now, instead of just responding to symptoms, they're prophylactically, which means prophylactically means like proactively, like doing it before. So before symptoms even show up, what you're going to do is you're implementing this signature of showing the body the illness or the disease so that it has a blueprint for what to follow, what course to take if they see that pathogen.
It sounds kind of like a vaccine. You put it in your body in the hopes that when it comes to time to fight it or exposure to it, your body knows what to do. What's the difference between HP and vaccines?
So one of the major differences is that route of entry. So when you receive a vaccine, you have a metal, a cold, hard metal object jammed through your skin. Essentially it goes into your muscle. So it's subcutaneous or intramuscular is where you receive a vaccine. It bypasses the natural immune barriers. So you have a very natural immune barrier. The skin is a very natural immune barrier. So anything we brush up against, our skin is able to address that with the certain biotic balance that's on our skin, and it helps us to prevent developing any pathogen or developing any condition. So it bypasses that natural immune route. Whereas HP, you actually introduce it in the very natural way that we would usually get a condition. So, for instance, polio is found in the gut and the GI. It's in feces. It's in poo, right? And so when you ingest it, it is a very natural route. Okay? That's the natural route that it follows. And in fact, there's a study that you can go back and read. It's called the Cutter Incident. And the Cutter Incident basically details how a family vaccine manufacturer of an oral polio vaccine caused nearly 40,000 polio cases by the way that they introduced their vaccine.
Okay. So
because they had followed the natural route of doing that. And so us doing that, HP follows that natural route, but it's education. So it gives that education to the immune system, and it helps the body to be able to fight against the pathogen if it's introduced in the future.
And the vaccine does a similar thing, though, or it goes in?
So it's injected. Yeah, yep. It's injected through your skin. So it bypasses the natural routes of the immune response or immune system, and so it's injected intramuscularly or subcutaneously, and then your immune system does find it. Now, sometimes they have noticed that with an injection, when you bypass the natural immune route, that it's not detected, or they don't have a very robust immune response. Okay, and so what they'll do is they'll add something to it. They'll add something to the vaccine to make it have a more robust immune response so that they draw attention of the immune system, because they know, hey, if I add this, I know it's going to increase the immune system detection capability, and I know it's going to irritate the body more. And so if I add this to it, it's going to allow this pathogen that I'm inserting to be more easily detected more quickly. And so they actually add something we call an adjuvant. So it's like add to it, adjuvant. They put that in there, and oftentimes it's like they'll use like aluminum, or they'll use, some people were very concerned about thimerosal, but there's a variety of different things that they'll use as adjuvants to irritate the immune response, just to agitate a little bit so that it draws attention to the pathogen. And that's because it's bypassing the natural immune route.
And do you have any concerns about that?
I do have a concern about it. My concern is that when you bypass those natural routes, the question is, are we really educating the immune system efficiently? And there are certain cells, immune cells, in different places of the body. So along my GI tract, which is all of my nasal mucosa, the oral cavity, the mouth, the throat, the GI tract, which is my gut, my stomach, my small intestine, large intestine, that whole area. So you have what are called B cells. B cells are essentially like initial response. They have more of an inflammatory response, and they're immune cells, but their lining is basically designed for external detection, you could say. Whereas internally, you have different cells of the immune response system called T cells. And these can be T helper cells. You have Th1 and Th2. So these helper cells help more internally within the cell itself and within the blood and internally in the body. So if you inject and you bypass the B cells, you're going to train perhaps the T cells, but you may not even train the B cell response. So it's really not a broad or a full, complete immune system education process. Whereas if you implement it or go through the natural processes that the immune system would usually incur a pathogen by in the environment, then you're actually going to educate it more naturally and more broadly. And what we want is a more broad education. We want a way more broad education, not such a narrow education. So when you receive a vaccine, oftentimes, and we even with the flu vaccine, they're saying, well, this strain, hopefully we got the right strain this year. Right? And that's what's often communicated. There's a variety of different strains. And if you happen to get just the right strain, well, boy, that worked great. That was fantastic. But if you didn't, and then we try to immunize people to the wrong strain, and the other strain shows up and moves its way through the community, well then, okay, we just immunized people, but it was a shot in the dark, right? And so it didn't really work out for us. Okay, so what we want to do is have a broad immunity and have a broad encompassing approach to immunity so that when we incur something in the natural environment, we have a much higher likelihood of having an understanding of what that is.
Why have nobody heard of HP?
Well, let me tell you, a lot of people have heard of HP.
Okay.
So 10 million people, I will tell you, in Cuba, there was a study done on people in Cuba, and there was actually 2.3 million people that received homeoprophylaxis. This was a leptospirosis study. Now what happens, leptospirosis occurs in and around the hurricane season. Okay, so they tracked these things really well, and they have data that suggests over time, how many incidents did we have of leptospirosis over a period of years, right? And so they can track that, and they did. We have the data for that, and they said, okay, we're going to take our country and we're going to run a test. And so we're going to put 2.3 million people on homeoprophylaxis, HP, health points. We're going to level up their health power with HP, and then with the rest of the group, the extra 7-8 million people, we're going to see what happens. It just so happened that they put those counties, areas that are most affected, historically most affected, okay? They put those people on HP. So that's a pretty significant test, right? Like you're going right after the heart of the problem. And then they said, all right, we'll see how this turns out. Well, what happened was they had the area that they did HP on had an 86% improvement, right? 86% effectiveness rate of HP, of healing power, health points, right? They had an HP 86% effective rate there. And also they compared local areas. The local areas around there that were not receiving HP actually increased. Their incidence rate went up by 20%. So 84% reduction essentially in one area, which was usually the most hit. And in this case, we wouldn't assume it would be any different. And then surrounding areas, 20% increase in leptospirosis cases. That's a pretty resounding, and a large study, millions of people.
So other governments around the world have actually used this HP.
Yep.
We just don't use it in the United States.
Correct.
Where else?
So
has this been
India is
implemented?
using it. Brazil's using it. There are clinics. There are clinics throughout the entire world, and there are people in the United States as well that are using it. It's just not like government sanctioned. You don't hear the CDC saying, "Oh yeah, go get your HP," and that doesn't happen here. But there was a town in Brazil that actually needed to implement it. A very small town, and one of the reasons they needed to implement HP is because they couldn't justify the ramping up of a full-scale vaccine program, right, for this little town. So they said, well, it just doesn't make a lot of economical sense for us to do this. So they found a local homeopath, and they said, hey, look, can you do HP for these people? And the homeopath went in there. He was experienced in using HP, and he implemented the HP with them. And we had I think it was a 78% effective rate. So he helped reduce the incidence by 78% in there. So there's another study that was done as well in India. And this is one people often say about the difference, looking at the difference of studies of vaccines versus HP. And they say, well, vaccines have a lot more robust and a lot more, studies that are randomized, clinical controlled trials that are placebo controlled, right? And it's like, okay, well, yeah, those are very good, and that's great to have those studies. But again, we talked about some of the problems with those studies. One of the study problems we talked about specifically was the fact that they take this placebo group, and then they use with that placebo group, what they're using as their placebo is not a true placebo, but they're using an old vaccine. Okay, so when you use an old vaccine as the placebo, which inherently the old vaccine also has problems with it as well. And if you know anything about VAERS, Vaccine Adverse Injury Reporting System, well, you know that we pay out hundreds of millions of dollars a year for vaccine injuries. The government pays out hundreds of millions of dollars a year for vaccine injuries. We actually do that because we're taxpayers. And people have to actually sue the government. And imagine suing your own government who is actually sponsoring this program, and you're trying to convince them that the rigor and the test has to be super high. Like your ability to prove that you've actually been damaged by a vaccine has to be really high in order to get money from that system, right? And we're paying out hundreds of millions a year. Okay, so we know that those things are occurring. We know that those things are occurring and happening, and we have to essentially check back in and say, okay, what's our role and what's our responsibility, and how can we help with this? Okay, HP ultimately is our way of helping people who are immune compromised or are really looking for another way. They might use vaccines. They might be vaccinating your kids according to the schedule. They might be delaying their schedule vaccines, but they want to support their kids in addition to the vaccines. So this is something you can do right along with the vaccines.
So how do I find someone who offers this? How do you prescribe it in your clinic?
Well, so we prescribe it in our clinic via a visit. You have a visit with me. We sit down, or one of my team members. You'll sit down, and we'll determine whether this is an appropriate thing for you. And then from there, we'll create a plan of what conditions you need to treat or what you want to prophylactically prevent. Maybe you're traveling, because you can use this for traveling. You can use it for a variety of things. Okay. Or maybe you just want to try a few things and see how it goes, and give yourself the best shot of health as possible. You just want to upgrade your health or level up and try to improve with your health power, your health points, and that's what you can do.
You can do it before you travel to a foreign country. You can do it before flu season. There's different ways to implement it, and I don't know. Any doubters out there you want to address?
You can do
any
it
more
in
points?
preparation for school.
Okay.
You can do it, right? You can do it preparation for school. You can do it in preparation for a mission, when you're leaving to a different country, if you're leaving home, when you're sending a child off to school. There's a lot of those little touch points when we would usually say, okay, how do I prepare my child as ideally as possible?
And you can give it to children, babies. How do they swallow it if they're not into that?
Yeah, so you put them in their mouth, and they will absorb it into their mucosa, into their body.
Do little babies like want to spit them out, or will they?
That hasn't been my experience. No.
Okay. Yeah. Any other doubters out there? What do you want to say to them? Not doubters, people who just are like, what are you talking about? I've never heard of this before.
Yeah, it's actually really exciting. It's a super exciting thing, but it has been around for a long time. And so it's surprising to me that we haven't heard about it. But again, you look at our system. You look at what we promote. You look at who has a chokehold in medicine. We all know who we're talking about.
Who has a chokehold?
Who has a chokehold?
Where's the money at?
The people who have paid to actually put their products into medical textbooks. So who's that? It's pharmaceutical companies. We know that, right? Pharmaceutical companies. And is that with malintent? I don't think so. I hope not. Let's put it that way. Some people say that pharmaceuticals have malintent, that they're bad actors. I don't know. I don't know that. I really don't. But what I do know is that they have profit as one of their central focuses of their business model.
As
right?
most businesses do.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, for sure.
So it's about the money.
Well, in their regard, and they're multinational corporations who have they're larger than a lot of governments in the world. In fact, maybe most governments in the world. A lot of pharmaceutical companies have a larger, you could say, GDP, right? They have a larger economy than a lot of governments in the world. And so, yeah, they can strong arm different people, or they can, they can wield a lot of influence, let's put it that way. And they certainly do in our country.
And you just get to this point where you just trust the system in some way. Maybe you're not a person who trusts the system, but you want to believe that the things you've been told are the right ways to do it. And then you're like, why have I been told this? Is a lot of pharmaceutical companies have a lot of money, and they pay a lot of money to politicians and their campaigns. And I don't know, the system is actually quite fascinating. And so it's like, I guess, how do I trust homeoprophylaxis? It doesn't have all the PR machine behind it that the pharmaceuticals do. And I'm just wondering, as the skeptic, sell me on this natural alternative potentially. Are there side effects to homeoprophylaxis, or is it pretty non-invasive? It's
very non-invasive.
Okay.
And that's one of the great things about homeoprophylaxis is very, very rarely, if ever, any side effects reported. Any side effects that have been reported, maybe like a little bit of upset stomach or a slight headache, and that's been about it. And so, it's very, very easy on the uptake. It's easily administered. It's easy to administer to your entire family.
No shots. That's
you don't have to use a needle. You don't have to go in, to a care provider and like carrying your child screaming and them not wanting to do it, and you're like encouraging them. It is, a lot of parents go through a lot of trauma. A lot of kids go through a lot of trauma in this whole process. So, yeah, there is an option there, a parallel track to say, hey, can I do something for myself and my child and my family and my loved ones for our immune systems, so that we can be as educated as possible, so that we can be prepped for that big exam, right? So we take that study course, that prep course, so when that exam comes, we're ready to go. And HP will do that. It will give you that health power. It will give you that healing power, right? So that when that disease presents itself, you're ready. You've been shown the image of the disease, and now you're ready to destroy it. HP.
Helping people.
I like it.
That one?
Yes, that's a good one.
If folks want to learn more about your clinic, how to maybe talk to you about homeoprophylaxis, HP, how can they reach out?
You can call our office at Community Health and Wellness. We're at 435-657-3696. You can find us online at chwheber.com.
Be well now, everybody.
Be well now.
Namaste.
Namaste. That was a dramatic pause. I paused on
Yes,
that.
it was.
Yeah, that was good.
I was waiting for it.
Yeah.
This could be the one episode where he doesn't say
Yeah,
namaste.
I was like, no, I'm going to say it. I'm going to pause.
What does namaste mean?
Namaste. I honor the God, the divine within you.
I love that.
Yes.